Welcome to the Radio Free Hub City Newscap, live from Honey Pot Acres Studio in Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm your host, DJ Warbuckler, the Red Pill Yahoo, and joined by me today is DJ BB, the Dingbat. Sorry, tongue-tied there. What is the Newscap? It's a podcast format show where we talk about local and global news that matters the most to Hub City. There's no dial-in line for the Newscap, no script, no set agenda. We talk about local and global news that matters the most to Hub City. The full recording of this show will be available through Spotify as well as X for replay. Now, let's take a look at tonight's topics. BB, I want to get us started. I have to say something about the tragedies that have happened within the last month in Hagerstown.
Fire away.
Yeah, so within the last month in Hagerstown, we have had, quite honestly, so many shootings that I have lost count of how many we've actually had. But most notably, I can think of at least 5. 2 shootings on August 2nd, no injuries. 1 fatal shooting on August 1st. A shooting on July 28th, no serious, 1 serious injury, but none fatal. And then a fatal shooting on July 18th, which, from what I've been told, I believe that was actually a double shooting where there was 1 injury and 1 death. And that occurred in broad daylight, endangering innocent bystanders on East Washington Street. So, Hagerstown is absolutely in crisis right now. And they have had so much violence that there's actually now a petition on change.org to mobilize the National Guard to tackle Hagerstown's civic unrest and drug crisis. Because even though the city won't come forward and say it, a lot of people believe that all the violence is absolutely related to drugs. And, whether it's drug deals gone bad or people that are, infringing on other drug dealers' territories or what have you, it's just absolutely tragic to see what's going on. BB, I know we said we're going to probably do a special podcast episode focused on this topic, and you're doing some research right now, but I wanted to go ahead and ask if you had some initial thoughts, some initial research that you would be comfortable sharing right now.
Yeah, so the research that I'm planning on doing, and I'm sure you'll be helping with because you help with everything, what Radio Free Hub City wants to do is we want to provide solid data. So to start, we're going to look for other towns, other cities that have very similar demographics to ours, similar employment industry, rent, similar prices, similar race and age, demographic, ethnicities, all of that. Because I feel like, if you just look and see, Seattle is a great example. They're very often on the forefront of different programs to curb homelessness, drug addiction, but that might not be applicable to us because, we're a very different size. We're a very different people. We're a very different community. So to start, I want to find other places that are similar to Hagerstown and Washington County. And then we want to see what they have tried that has worked and what has not worked so great. And if we can, how and why those things have worked or didn't work. Because maybe something was a really great idea and they just ran out of funding. You know what I mean? So that's kind of our goal. We don't want to release that. Now, I did find out that former Mayor Emily Keller, who now heads up the opioid response task force for the state of Maryland, she was working on a similar project and she submitted that to the governor's office. But the problem that I foresee with that is that the governor's office needs to make decisions for the good of Maryland as a whole. So, that would include Baltimore, Montgomery County, places, again, that are not like Washington County, not like Hagerstown. We're very unique. So we want to release it to everyone. When we get this information, we will release it through Radio Free Hub City, and that way it's not just going to elected officials or anything like that. It will be for everyone to see, so that everyone can kind of get a bird's eye view of what we're looking at. So I started with that last evening, and I also wanted to say, when I saw the National Guard thing this morning, I kind of, I kind of did one of those, oh boy, because at least personally, when I think of the National Guard, I think of, military response, natural disaster response. But upon looking into it further, I did find out that they have task force for exactly these situations. So that might not be as ridiculous as it first sounded, because that is exactly what they specialize in. And I had to think back to the pandemic, where we had the National Guard, for vaccines and stuff. And this seems like a very similar setup, where they are bringing immediate resources and help for law enforcement, help for emergency response, and they just kind of set up shop in a temporary staging area. So that might actually be a very helpful thing. And that is exactly what those task force through the National Guard are meant to do. Come help identify the problems, and then see what resources they might be able to provide immediately, like triage,
That's interesting. I'm
Yes.
okay with a specific task force like that coming in to
Yes.
gather data and triage. What I'm not okay with is the thought of having the National Guard patrolling the streets of Hagerstown to maintain law and order. That's what worries me, and I'm very concerned that should things continue the direction they are going, they may end up invoking that idea, and that makes me so sad. It really does. So
yeah, it was. Well, as soon as I saw, National Guard, I was like, oy vey, I don't really know if we're, to that point yet. But I did, like, when I looked into it, and I found out that they do have very specific task forces, for exactly that can be as far as even like sending counselors out among the homeless population and things like that, and just seeing if anybody wants to go to a rehab facility or something like that, or connecting them with resources. And to me, what it seemed like was kind of a step between private citizens and law enforcement, because it's not a crime to be homeless, and it's not a crime to struggle with substance dependencies. Where the crime comes in is kind of like use of these substances, or maybe doing things that endanger other people, endanger the general public, endanger the community. So I think a lot of times when we talk about any kind of law enforcement response or increased law enforcement presence, people immediately assume that someone is suggesting that people should get in trouble simply for being on the street, or for struggling with dependency issues. And we at Radio Free Hub City don't think that's the case at all. Like, we don't think people should just be in trouble for having nowhere to go. That's a terrible thing, and that's not a crime. So this week I've kind of been working to on social media and stuff, I've kind of just been working to remind people that maybe a good place to start is to just put ourselves in the shoes of other people. And I know that I personally, it is 100 degrees outside. I have a hard time being outside because I want to be. I can't imagine being outside downtown where there's lots of people, no relief from the heat, possibly not clothes that are suited to this weather, nowhere to just go get a cool drink, nowhere to eat. I thought of bug bites. You get any kind of cut in this weather, you start sweating. That's very uncomfortable. That's very, very uncomfortable. And I really don't think that would be a lot of people's first choice. So I think maybe that's one of the first steps to change, is just sort of considering that, you know, none of these people, at least in their own minds, have a better or more accessible option. And they're just deciding, like, nope, I just want to sit here and roast and sweat and frighten people. I mean, I really don't think that's the case. And I also
Well,
think we have.
it's funny you'd mention sitting there, because one of the steps that the city council, that the city of Hagerstown has taken to address the crime issues, and I don't know how this was supposed to actually help, was they removed the benches from public square. So now the people don't even have anywhere to sit, when they're hot and exhausted.
Right.
So,
and I mean, I think, we just kind of, not we, you and I, not Radio Free Hub City, but I think we collectively in the community, we kind of see this all as one issue. And by that, I mean, people look at it as homeless, drug crimes, criminals. You know what I mean? Like, and those are very different things. People can become unhoused for a number of reasons. I myself was homeless years ago, and it was through no fault of my own. And there was no help available to me either. So, I kind of know what that feels like. And I truly do feel for people, because yes, there are some people that are unhoused and off the radar purposefully. But there are a lot of people that have just, kind of fallen by the wayside, and specifically, like, so last time we talked about vehicle registration has gone up by more than 50% in the state of Maryland. Most drivers are looking at about an 80% increase. People are looking at a significant increase on their rent for the same property, and also groceries. So, it's no wonder that last year at this time, people were barely hanging on by a thread as it is. And now they're paying 50 to 80% more for exactly the same thing. I really do understand how people are quickly pulled underwater and cannot recover.
Yeah.
And it's just, it really is just
yeah.
Once you've kind of fallen by the wayside, or you've gotten behind, it's that much more difficult to keep up, because I mean, let's just take the cost to register a vehicle. Well, if you can't afford to do that, you either can't drive your vehicle legally, or you have to chance it and drive your vehicle illegally, which can result in fines, jail time, like, it. And especially because we know, especially downtown in the residential area, it is kind of a food desert, and we have little shops that do their best to provide, but certainly not a full service grocery store. So, if you don't drive and you can't afford delivery services, where are you, where are you meant to get food that you can afford? Convenience goods cost astronomically more in general. And it just, I mean, I think we need some multifaceted approaches, because this is a multifaceted crisis.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. And I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but one of the other things too is, okay, so the benches. All right, I'm sorry, that was absolutely silly. That was a knee-jerk reaction. All right, because the people that are sitting on those benches, the people that are homeless and sitting on those benches, are not the people that are shooting at each other. They just aren't.
No.
There was no reason to remove those benches. And in fact, when those benches were originally installed, those benches were originally installed with the intention of reducing crime. And their reasoning for removing those benches was because the benches were causing crime. Ladies and gentlemen, This is the government. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Right. And they said they were moving some to City Park, and we just saw, just this week there was a discussion about People actually setting up makeshift living arrangements in City Park. And so it just kind of seems like we we keep trying to. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to clean up downtown, but if you're not solving the problem and you're just moving it a couple blocks away, pushing people further and further to the edge of the city, those people are getting further and further from resources too. And also to anyone listening, that's another thing that I am trying to learn. I very often see comments that say there are so many resources that people can just avail themselves of if they want to. Anyone that is not availing themselves of all this help must just prefer to live this way. I am having trouble finding these resources. So if anyone would like to direct us to where, and I'm not talking, I mean, we have a lot of wonderful people that provide bag lunches or a hot meal at dinner time or meals for children. I'm not talking about, the private citizen or church outreach, things like that. I mean, where are these, let's say that you are unhoused and you are addicted to some sort of substance and you are in danger because you're just out there in the street, like all of this violence is happening. Where is that person to go? That is what I would like to know. And I'm not talking be charged with a crime and being sentenced to a rehab or something like that. I mean, where are these resources that a person that is just living on the street that does not want to do that anymore because it's not safe and it's not healthy, where are these resources that they can avail themselves of, and how do they get there? That's what I'm trying to find out first.
Yeah. And by the way, if you have, if you know where to get these resources, you can reach out to us through the radiofreehubcity.com website, or even better yet, go onto the radiofreehubcity.com community and just post in there under either local politics for Maryland or the general discussion. And let's talk about what local resources are available. Start sharing them. We've got that great community page that I've set up now, and it's starting to take off. We're starting to get some good engagement in there. So please, please, please take advantage of that. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, we are a media outlet, and that is a way that we can help.
Yeah.
If one person hits us up with a mustard seed idea, and then somebody else next week hits us up with another mustard seed idea, maybe we can figure out how to connect these people and grow that into something feasible that will cause noticeable change in the immediate future. That's what we would like to do. We would just like to help connect all of these people that say, I would like to have a voice, I would like to help. We need to just connect everybody. It seems like lots of people want to help, but nobody can do this by themselves. So, let's work on connecting.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Any final thoughts before we move on to the next topic?
Nope, we'll get that in depth.
Excellent. All right, BB, what do you got for our next topic?
Well, they just announced today, let's see, I don't want to misquote this, that some of the gun laws in the state of Maryland were ruled unconstitutional. And I found that very interesting because, Maryland we have been on the forefront of changes as far as gun laws go, gun controls go. And this is not the first time that we have seen gun laws in Maryland be ruled unconstitutional. And so let me see. This one, let's see. I'm scrolling back. Yeah, okay, so it was the gun laws that were having to do with like you can't carry in certain public places, things of that nature. That was ruled unconstitutional today. Restricting concealed carry in restaurants, private buildings was ruled unconstitutional.
Well, I think tying that into our previous discussion and some of the escalating dangers in Hagerstown, I'm happy to hear that. So
I am too, and I really think that as far as that goes, because that might seem counterintuitive, right? Like, well, if we're ruling gun control laws unconstitutional, no wonder there's gun violence. But I think that it would be helpful for people to know. And I mean, this includes us. Very often we get these press releases about a shooting or a murder or violence downtown, and we only get limited information. I know other media outlets only get very limited information. And we would like to know, are the firearms being used in these crimes? Are they legal? Are they legally owned? Are these stolen? Are these unregistered? How were they illegally obtained? Any firearm that is being used in connection with a drug crime is not a legal firearm. So, we have laws that are already being broken, I guess is my point.
Yeah, well, and I follow City of Baltimore, their police department, and I see every time they post one of the firearms that they confiscate. A lot of those firearms they confiscate, they are pretty clearly stolen. In that you can see that, oh, hey, they scratched out the serial numbers, or my favorite one that I've seen is they'll actually take the if it's a revolver, they'll actually take the grip off and wrap it with a rubber band instead. And a lot of
modified illegal modifications, that's a big problem. So, and again, any firearm used in commission of a crime is not a legal firearm.
Right. Well, and a lot of them actually look like they're old firearms that it's I don't know if that thing even works.
Right.
And it's kind of scary that people are hauling around these firearms, because they're not a danger just to other people. They're probably a danger to themselves too. So,
right. And I do notice, especially with the press releases that we get, a lot of them, and when I say a lot, I mean the vast majority, they usually say something like the assailant and the victim were known to each other, and that this was like they don't use these words, but a personal beef, and that this was an isolated incident, and there is no further danger to the public. It's not expected to be a broader threat. And it just seems like with so many of those in the same area, I personally have a hard time swallowing that these are all just completely unrelated. Like, I have a hard time believing that on the same day, 3 random people unknown to each other, not in any of the same, not all selling drugs, not all, just 3 random people decided to kick in 3 other random people's front door and tried to kill them, and none of that was related. I mean, to me, that just seems, if that is the case, then that seems like an even bigger problem than if they were perhaps related. So I think a little bit of transparency, a little bit more information would help citizens feel a little bit safer, because I know a lot of people that just don't feel safe because the way that this is presented to us is that this is all completely random. Nobody could have seen it coming. We have no idea who did it. We have no idea why. That's just what happened. Somebody kicked somebody's door in and shot them on your street today, but it should be fine now. We don't, that's scary.
Yeah, well, we sure do have a lot of isolated incidents that don't really seem that isolated. So, hopefully we will start to see more transparency, especially as there's a lot of increased pressure to address these problems. So, yeah, absolutely. So, all right, well, I don't want to dwell on that too much. Let's move on to the next topic. Next topic is concerns raised over policies at Meritus Health affecting patient care quality. And the biggest concern, and this was a letter that was getting distributed on social media that was written by Dr. Mary Money, who is a independent physician in Hagerstown. She's not part of the Meritus healthcare system. Is that Meritus has started implementing a policy that limits patient encounters to 20 minutes. Now, according to Meritus, no such policy exists, but they have a standardized scheduling time window of 20 minutes, which has been the longstanding average appointment length for primary care visits.
Right.
But supposedly doctors are not timed out at 20 minutes or get in trouble for 20 minutes. But talking with some of the physicians that have worked at Meritus, they will actually be financially penalized if they don't meet a certain number of patients per day. This has been going on now for quite some time. Apparently, this was one of the policies put into place by the new CEO of Meritus, from what I was told. But it's heartbreaking to see this, and apparently because of some of these policies, some of the healthcare providers are leaving Meritus rapidly, and the new providers don't necessarily have the same experience as these seasoned providers, and there's a concern that could cause problems with quality of patient care. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this, BB?
I think that the patient experience, I did ask around when we did this story, and since you were kind of communicating with medical professionals, I decided to communicate with some patients. And it was a majority of the patients, and I spoke to more than 10, just people that go there for checkup, people that have gone for emergency care, things like that. The majority of them expressed that there have been times when they were seeing a primary that they felt rushed. And a couple of them said, I was like, what do you mean by rushed? You know what I mean? And so, like, they said that they would have questions and they would be told. Now, again, I did not experience this personally, but I was told that they were directed to, well, the nurse will be in. You are welcome to ask her any of these questions. Any of these questions and more can be found on our online patient portal, things of that nature. And they were not answered directly by the primary. So people, and a couple of people expressed that they felt bad asking more questions, like they felt like they were keeping the doctor. And they did not want to do that, but at least 3 of the people that I spoke to had never used the patient portal. 2 of them said that they were uncomfortable setting up an account on the patient portal. So, and just because, we've seen how many cyber attacks on hospital systems and things like that, data stolen and whatnot. So I think that maybe if we're going to be encouraging people to do that, there should be a representative from Meritus to kind of walk people through that, help them set that up, talk to them about security and safety, things of that nature. I mean, if the primary physician has got to go, then maybe there should be somebody else whose job it is to take as much time as a patient needs to answer any of their questions, without directing them elsewhere. If you're receiving medical care, especially if you've been prescribed something, or if you have to decide to go forward with an upcoming procedure that was recommended or not, that there should be someone who has, or it feels like they have as much time as you need to talk about this with you.
Yeah, and so I actually have some statistics that I pulled from, I believe it was Medicare.gov. Yeah, Medicare.gov. Comparing Meritus to other hospitals across the country. And one of the interesting things that you just keyed in on is communication between doctors and patients. Nationwide, 80% average of patients feel that their doctors always communicate well with them. At Meritus, it's only 73%. Now, gets even worse. Nationwide, for patients getting help as soon as they feel they need it, the nationwide average is 66%. At Meritus, it's only 57% of patients feel they receive help as soon as they need it. So that's and that's not even going into like ER statistics or anything like that. These are just base level. These are the ratings of Meritus. So
Right.
there's definitely some concerns, and overall, I have heard and I hate to say this, I really hate to say this, but I have heard many of my friends refer to it as Murderous Medical Center, not Meritus, Murderous. If you're being referred to as Murderous Medical Center, you've got a problem. You don't have just a problem if your statistics are a little bit low. You've got a public image problem.
Yeah.
And I something else that I think that's really worth mentioning is the new stadium. There were a lot of people who were very turned off by the fact that the new stadium is being sponsored by Meritus, that they are spending all this money on sponsorship of the new ball stadium. But then at the same time, when they're spending all this money on the ball stadium, now they're penalizing doctors if they don't see a certain number of patients per day. Whiskey Tango Foxtrot is my response to that. BB, what's your thoughts?
Yes, it. Whenever I saw that, I thought, oh my goodness, that kind of is, a lot. But then I also learned that Meritus has received a lot of grants. From the federal government, from the state of Maryland. So it probably almost evened out for Meritus.
But so all right. So I want to get this straight. So they're getting grants for sponsoring baseball stadiums and stuff like that, but they're not getting grants to treat patients.
They sponsored the baseball stadium, and then they got a couple million in grants for community outreach. And one of the things that they did was plant some trees. And then in March 2023, they got about $50,000 from Blue Cross Blue Shield to be implemented through the AARP to reduce health disparities. So, it's not like Meritus just put some money out and did not get any back. They are the recipient of state and federal and possibly private grant. Right. I'm not entirely sure, but and then they got, let's see. So the state of Maryland actually budgeted in $10 million for the Meritus School of Osteopathic Medicine. So yeah, I mean they did sponsor the stadium, but they're also the recipient of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars through grants and other funding.
So I have to ask, why are they getting? Why do grants exist to basically pay for baseball stadium sponsorships for a healthcare system, and instead, when that money could just go towards, I don't know, reducing the cost of patient care in the first place?
Yeah,
I'm wow, just wow. I'm speechless on that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I don't know the exact number. It is in the millions since spring of 2023. I do know that.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next topic. But before we move on to the next topic, I want to give a word from our sponsor, Honey Pot Acres Farm. Do you want to eat healthier but don't trust all those preservatives that they put in grocery store food? Try Honey Pot Acres Farm, where technology meets nature. Our GMO-free, all-natural products are bursting with flavor and nutrition. Look for us at the Sharpsburg Farmers Market on the first Sunday of every month behind Battleview Market on Sharpsburg Pike. And you can also visit honeypotacres.com for more information and our upcoming schedule. That's honeypotacres.com. And just want to also throw a shout out here that By the way, we are accepting sponsorships for this podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to explore opportunities for expanding your reach, we're getting a very significant number of listeners right now. Right now, we are getting within the past, let's see here, 30 days, we got, what was it here, 2,901 listens to our last news cap, which was on July 2024. So almost 3,000 listens per month is what we're getting right now. And that's just growing. You know, we're seeing tremendous growth on the podcast. So if you're interested in sponsoring, please reach out. And, you know, we're happy to have a chat with you. Just go to radiofreehubcity.com and let's talk about sponsorship opportunities. So now, with that said, BB, what's our next topic?
Actually, sort of related. So, unfortunately, we have had a terrible drought this summer, and a lot of Maryland farmers are saying that their crops are just devastated, particularly farmers that focus on corn. This is the time of year where their corn is starting to come in, and they are just telling us that a lot of their corn is toast and can't, to the point that it cannot probably even be used for animal feed unless they just grind up the cob. And that's going to be just absolutely devastating. And we know earlier this season, a lot of the strawberry farms, kinds of berry farms, things of that nature, they were not coming in. Tomatoes are having, you know, small farms that sell, you know, a variety of produce. They're having a really hard time, but a lot of our farms are primarily corn and soybean when we talk industrial farm, and they are toast. I don't know a nice way to say it. They are toast this year. And so I guess I just kind of wanted to encourage people to, you know, maybe think of trying something new. You know, we're all kind of used to, you know, 90% or better of all of the products in the grocery store, including diapers, have corn in them. And that's going to be a problem. So, you know, maybe try to think of something else. You know, we are used to just walking into a grocery store and seeing a cornucopia of anything you can imagine, even stuff that's not native to the United States. So maybe just consider, you know, trying something new and trying to buy local. And then another thing that I saw a lot of farmers suggesting, unlike other states, it is not illegal to collect rainwater in Maryland to water your crops. So I thought maybe you would like to talk about how we have kind of availed ourselves of rain barrels and things of that nature at Honey Pot to kind of offset the cost of watering, because it is incredibly expensive to water crops 1 or 2 times a day. And it is also so hot that a lot of farmers have reported if you're not watering at the roots and the leaves are getting wet and you're watering earlier in the day, it's just frying the plants.
Yeah. No, so you know, one of the things that we're actually in the process of doing at Honey Pot is we have a rain barrel set up that we're working on. All I need to do yet is buy a gutter system to attach to it, and it'll be collecting a lot of rainwater as it comes down. And if you're thinking about doing a rainwater collection system, you know, there's great kits you can buy online that you don't even need a barrel for. It's just basically a collapsible barrel that has basically tent pegs that keep it in shape. And then, you know, there's diverter kits that you can purchase that allow you to just hook it into your downspouts for your house and drain into the barrel. So definitely look into it. And if you're going to do such a thing, I suggest doing that very soon, because actually here within the next couple of days, we're about to get hit with Hurricane Debbie's remnants. So that's going to be a lot of water that if you have the opportunity to collect it, do so. I
saw another very clever person that was using, you know, everybody's got their air conditioner running on full blast. It is hot. Yep. And somebody pointed out that you can simply set a bucket underneath your window unit outside and you can use that water that drips from your air conditioning unit to water any plants that you have at your home. And I thought that was wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the water that comes out of your air conditioning unit, I wouldn't drink it. But it's technically basically distilled water.
Right. Yeah.
And the way that
they wouldn't for pets or people, but it is 100% fine for plants. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, and with that said too, as far as the farms go, if you haven't been to a local farmers market, please try to do so. There's a farmers market almost every day of the week now in Washington County. There's farmers market in Boonesboro, farmers market in Smithsburg, farmers market in Sharpsburg. That's the one that Honey Pot Acres goes to. Of course, the biggest one is the one that's in Hagerstown. But then also too, there's plenty of roadside produce stands here in Washington County as well. Stop by them, and you'll find that the food there, it might be slightly more expensive than at the grocery store, but it's so much better quality, and it's going to taste so much better, and it's going to be a lot more nutritious too. I used to work at a grocery store, and let me tell you something. The produce at the grocery store, a lot of it is actually coated with wax, and they do that so that it's shiny and more attractive. All right, you're better off eating ugly produce, and the reason for that is because the ugly produce does not have the extra stuff added to it. So definitely go out there, do your homework, find some good farmers markets to patronize. So, BB, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, there are other ways to support local farms. A lot of them have flowers, things like that, decorative things. And also, they might have been used to having enough of a certain crop to supply a restaurant or something. If you know of a restaurant or food truck that is happy to take small batches, let a local farmer know. We don't need you to supply us for the entire season. We understand that you're struggling. If you have enough for a dinner service or a day at a food truck, just consider other ways we can support our local farmers, because we need local farmers. We need good, fresh, local produce. And we are always the first ones to complain when we say things like, oh, well, there goes more farmland. They put up another warehouse. So we have got to support these farms if we do not want to see them go away. They're having a bad year, and that is going to devastate lots of farmers. That is their job. That's how they support their families. And if they can't afford to do that, then they are going to have to sell that land. So, help the farmers save their farm. They're having a bad year. Everybody knows what it's like to have a bad year, or to have your employment, have to take a pay cut. It's miserable. So, just think of ways in your own life that you can be supportive of one of our favorite local industries.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Moving on. One topic that I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to try to be as politically neutral with this one, and that is the absolute mess that is our current presidential race. So July was absolutely, it definitely threw some curveballs for the whole presidential race, starting off with President Trump, former President Trump, an assassination attempt at him at a rally in Pennsylvania, and then followed up by President Biden announcing that he won't seek re-election for 2024. So it's been a just crazy month when it comes to the national politics scene. But something that I have to bring up. All right, now I don't care if you support Trump or not. I don't care if you support Biden or not. Shooting at a presidential candidate, shooting at a former president, shooting at anybody for that matter, is just wrong. And what's even more wrong is when other news outlets run headlines that President Trump was rushed off the stage at his rally because he was startled by loud noises. That is terrible journalism, folks. All right, especially when you can see that, oh, hey, he's bleeding, and those loud noises, which you could hear on the freaking video, were clearly gunshots, folks. And in the rush to try and be the first to scoop a story, the details still matter. And I'm sorry, but running a story with such terrible, terrible information that he was startled by loud noises is absolutely unexcusable, in my opinion. BB, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it truly is. And I tried to kind of, play devil's advocate in my own head on that. So I actually kept an eye. I'm familiar with the story, the headline that you're talking of. And 72 hours later, it remained unchanged, right? And I can tell you, you can verify. You can change a headline on any of your stories in as long as it takes you to log in and type it out. And you could just put the word updated, anything like that. And it did not change as far as I know. I stopped checking after 72 hours. And after 24 hours, a lot of the comments were very angry, saying, that this is very misleading, but people were still interacting with it. It had a high point of interaction. So it was simply put behind a paywall, and it kept the misleading headline. And to me, that was just, kind of egregious to sort of suggest that, if people want to tell you about yourself for publishing something so misleading, especially, it's such a tragedy. People lost their lives that day. And so to minimalize it to loud noises as if some fireworks had gone off and people were unnecessarily scared or something, and then to leave it that way and suggest people need to pay money to tell you why that's wrong, I found that super egregious personally.
Yeah, and for the news outlet that did that, well, news outlets, it was actually multiple outlets that did it. One of them was local. Thank you for reinforcing why we do what we do. Thank you for reinforcing why I have said from the beginning we will never put our news behind a paywall. Thank you for reinforcing why I've said that we will verify facts before running stories, even if we're not the first to publish. And, we might end up losing thousands of views that way. But at the same time, I'd rather inform 30 people of a factual story than mislead 20,000. So right. that's I'm just heartbroken to see what modern journalism has devolved into. And the ironic part is, you and I, neither of us are journalists, by trade. Neither of us had any schooling on how to be a journalist.
Well, technically, I am. I am. But
well, okay.
Not as far as choosing my own content.
Right.
Self-publishing, none of that. No.
Well, but also at the same time too. So the what you and I do by trade is vastly different than traditional news reporting. Yeah. Okay. Right. So it's just insane to me to see so many legitimate, hey, I've been a journalist my whole life. Where along the line did they lose their ethics? That's what I want to know.
And then everyone wants to get mad that people make uninformed decisions as far as voting or policy or community events, things of that nature. And it's just kind of like you can't get mad at private citizens when, we've touched on this on another podcast. It's you should inform yourself. But if the information that you are being given is misleading or unreliable, that's not your fault. that falls under the accountability of the people that know, and especially, locally, we get the same press releases as everyone else. So when I see a
Right.
headline that I know must be purposely misleading, it really does irritate me, because I think, we were all given the same information and you chose to take it that way for sensationalism. And that's not what news is supposed to be. That's what tabloids are for. That's not what news is supposed to be. News is supposed to be informative, period.
Yep, I agree 100%. So, yeah, I don't want to focus on that too much, because I'll just get all riled up, and we'll spend the entire rest of this conversation talking about it. And I don't want to do that, because I know we've got a couple other stories we want to talk about. So, BB, what is your next topic?
Well, it's kind of along the same vein. So, this week we did have, the Olympics. Oh boy, the Olympics. We have had people just absolutely furious about this and that. And I have seen quite a few stories that, in the days that have followed, we have found out were wildly untrue. So my next point was how difficult it is to, when you see something on social media that makes sense and appears to be fact-based. They appear to offer fact. One good example is there was a female boxer, and it was reported that this person was born a biological male and was competing in women's boxing, and that wasn't fair, and that she had failed a genetics test. And when it came out, when more facts came out, that was entirely untrue. And the test that they were referring to is not a legitimate medical test, and it came from a boxing federation that had actually been banned by the International Olympic Committee and several other leagues for exactly that reason. And so I just kind of wanted to encourage people, that a lot of times there are real people on the end of these stories. So if you see something upsetting, I know a lot of people that spoke up felt like they were standing up for women. They truly felt like a biological male was being allowed to participate in a pugilistic sport with biological women. And they thought they were standing up for women, saying how incredibly unfair this is. But when it came out that that was irrefutably false, to the point that the boxer's dad released her medical records to the public, just how that woman must have felt. You work your way up to the top of anything, and then, people are accusing you of being a man for all intents and purposes. There are real people on the other end of these things. So I just wanted to encourage, and that goes back to what we were just talking about. If you see something that is presented as news, or a post that claims to be fact-based, do your own research, because even if you are mad at this item, even if you are saying this is unequivocally false, how dare they, you are still sharing that content. They are still getting paid. And you get paid the same for engagement, whether it's positive or negative. And that is why people do this, because they know that the first group of people is going to share it because they think it's true. But then the second group of people is going to share it because they're angry at how false it is. And all of those people have then put money in the pocket of the person that lied to everyone about an innocent person. So I think that's just one thing that I wanted to leave with today is, especially with elections coming up, the Middle East is popping off.
Right.
The UK is popping off. Just try to consult more than one source. Try to do your independent research. It's a shame that people have to do that. It is a shame that you cannot just click a news story from what is accepted as a popular, reliable news source, and take their word for it. I'm just going to go ahead and say you really can't. You need to check more than one source. You need to Google a little bit, certainly before you share it on social media, before you make any decisions based on it. Just just really try to find some time in your day to make sure what you're engaging with is authentic and what you're basing your decisions on is true to the best of your ability to figure out.
And that right there, folks, is the difference between us and other news outlets. Because, I clearly remember back during the pandemic, all the news outlets saying, don't do your own research, or you have to rely on the news outlets to tell you what's going on. That if you do your own research, that you'll just get false conclusions. Now, to be fair, all right, there is some bias when you are researching something on your own, that you will have confirmation bias. All right. But instead of acknowledging the confirmation bias, the news outlets just simply said, no, don't do your own research at all. And I'm going to tell you right now, do your own research and also throw in counterpoints. Be your own devil's advocate. Look into every possible angle and don't rely on your own confirmation bias. Don't rely on just what, agrees with what you already believe. I'm blown away by how much misinformation that I have seen in these past couple days from legitimate news sources. And they're all politically biased. And just shame on them. Shame on every single one of them for having political bias in their reporting and not focusing on just the facts. Whatever happened to good old Walter Cronkite? That man would sign on. He would tell you the news. He'd tell you like it was. He wouldn't put his opinion in there at all. And then he'd sign off, and he was done for the night. We have this podcast here. This is an audio version of our news, yes, but we also interject our own opinions in it because it's also important for us to have an entertainment aspect to our news. But we make sure that up front, this is our opinions, okay? We are not going and we're injecting opinion into our news stories to make our opinion come across as news. No. If you want just a straight factual news without the opinions injected, you go to our website, go read the articles, period. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, anything that's opinion or sponsored will be labeled as such. And that's another thing that people can do. If you're reading a news article, you can look and see if there's information. Look for information at the bottom about the author, because that might tell you that this is in fact an opinion piece. Or look for information about a sponsor, because that will tell you that somebody paid to have this article written from their perspective or their point of view. So, reading, and a lot of people don't make it past the headline. We see headlines that are they sound like one sentence of fact. And so a lot of people just scroll and they don't have a whole lot of time to sit there and read. Gone are the days where we wake up, we walk to our front porch, and there's a 30-page physical newspaper to flip through over our morning coffee. We don't live in that society anymore. So just, really take care to see who paid for this article, who wrote this article, what was their motivation, and what point are they trying to make?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it for the night. That last conversation took a little bit longer than I was expecting. But don't forget to go to our website and, we have more latest news information on radiofreehubcity.com. If you're interested in my personal opinion on the whole National Guard situation and the crimes that have been occurring down in Hagerstown, go on there. I've got a few opinion articles on that. But also, at the same time, please feel free to come into our community and let's chat about it. Let's chat about these issues. How can we fix them? And we're starting to get some conversations on that going. So please come participate. BB, any final thoughts before we call this a night?
Just again, just like I said, we have crisis where we live, but we also have global crisis reaching a boiling point on several fronts in several arenas. And I would just like to encourage everybody to challenge themselves this month. Don't let social media, don't let other people do your critical thinking for you. Do your own critical thinking. Think for yourself and just really do your best to be informed and open-minded and just stay informed. We're all going to need to be very informed in the coming months.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's it for tonight's newscast. So on behalf of BB and myself and all of the Radio Free Hub City family, thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time. And don't forget to visit our website for more local and national news at radiofreehubcity.com.